Costus Woodsonii Maas, also known as red button ginger. First, I choose healthy and strong stem before making any cut. Then I make a cut at 10 centimeters from plant base or just below last green stem. Then I divide into small cutting about 15 centimeters each. I plant Costus Woodsonii Maas cutting about 7 to 8 centimeters deep. I make sure the soil is moist and not soggy before planting them. After that, I give sprinkle of water and spray the humidity domes, plastic bags, or anything you can use temporarily enclose your planter pot. This is being done to retain a high humidity environment. Costus Woodsonii Maas also can be propagate using water. For me, propagation using water take me about 28 days before transplant to growing media. Usually for Costus Woodsonii Maas, I prefer using soil rather than water to propagate them. Because for me, Costus Woodsonii Maas have higher chances to produce root using soil rather than water. Before taking a cutting, I sanitize my scissor. By doing this, I try to prevent new cutting from becoming infected from disease-causing pathogens. I sterilized my scissor using rubbing alcohol swab. Milkweed assassin bug are attracted to the extrafloral nectaries which occur between the bracts. By the way, you also could use chlorine bleach or hydrogen peroxide to disinfect your tool. When cut stem to smaller pieces, please make sure there are several node, preferably 3 to 6 nodes in each cut section. For me, preferred diameter stem size for Costus Woodsonii Maas for propagation is about 1 centimeter, 10 millimeters. Simply put, the same size to pencil diameter. After that, you can remove any lower leaf if you want to. And you can leave only the uppermost leaf intact. Or you can cut off about 75% of every leaf. By doing this, allow the stem section to focus on rooting rather than sustaining the whole leaf. First stem cutting Costus Woodsonii Maas success propagation. Second stem cutting Costus Woodsonii Maas success propagation. Third stem cutting Costus Woodsonii Maas success propagation. Fourth stem cutting Costus Woodsonii Maas success propagation. New leaves start to appear. I hope 2 more stem cutting that I planted will success to propagate. By the way, you also can propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas by place the stem horizontally. When propagate stem cutting horizontally, you can either half-buried or fully cover Costus stem with soil. From my observation, this is how Costus Woodsonii Maas propagate in the wild. Fifth stem cutting Costus Woodsonii Maas success propagation. Hopefully, the final stem will be able to propagate. For this growing season, I do not use any rooting hormone. Some say, rooting hormone are essential elements to ensure successful rooting. Please carefully read the instructions before beginning to use rooting hormone. You can use rooting hormone if you want. For me, maintaining consistent soil moisture, light, and humidity are essential to ensure successful rooting. It seems the last stem failed to propagate. You can tell propagation have failed because the stem dry out, turn to brown without producing any new growth. During propagation, unrooted cutting require water to prevent desiccation. Water is important since it needed for processes such as photosynthesis. Photosynthesis influence root development and plant growth. As we all know, plant cannot grow or survive without photosynthesis. The key to success stem propagation is to minimize transpiration, leaf water loss until root formation. You can use propagators to minimize transpiration. Its seam one of stem in the middle doesn't look healthy. Its seam one of the stem in the middle go to a better place. When you propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas using stem cutting, it is normal that not all stem will have successful propagation. The reason for using propagators or polypropagator is also to minimize fluctuating low-high temperatures. Since propagators usually come with heat mat or heat cables to maintain consistent temperatures. Also, you can just use humidity domes if your daily temperatures does not fluctuate very much. For me, I just use plastic bag to make humidity dome. Since my living climate temperature doesn't fluctuate very much, I just need to maintain consistent humidity level. Every day I make sure that my cutting growing media is still in moist condition. To have good success rate for propagation Costus Woodsonii Maas, don't let soil become soggy or dry. On day 43, I relocate my container to new location. I locate my Costus Woodsonii Maas to full sun location. From my observation, at age 150 day, Costus Woodsonii Maas can withstand mild to moderate drought. But Costus Woodsonii Maas, it prefers to be watered, rather stay in dried soil condition. When Costus Woodsonii Maas, in humidity dome, I only water the plant if the topsoil become a little bit dry, which rarely happen. For me, ideal soil temperatures for propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas is between 24 to 30 degrees Celsius. It seems small working ant are looking some food. For me, ideal soil temperatures for growing Costus Woodsonii Maas is between 24 to 32 degrees Celsius. Cold tolerance for Costus Woodsonii Maas down to 30 degrees Fahrenheit minus 1.1 degrees Celsius with protection against frost. Ideal humidity for Costus Woodsonii Maas propagation is at 85% minimum. For first few days, you can maintain humidity at maximum level. For me, Costus Woodsonii Maas cuttings will have created their own roots in day 14 to day 21. When I propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas cuttings, at day 16 I remove my humidity dome. Raining earlier today. Common green bottlefly come to visit. Danger to human due to its own eating habits. Do not let them near food or drinking water. After 3 weeks, after remove propagators, Costus Woodsonii Maas cuttings should be completely acclimated to the environment. My average humidity when try propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas is 88%. Morning dew. Ideal humidity for Costus Woodsonii Maas propagation is at least 85%. In cases where humidity levels are high and temperatures are low, it will cause Costus Woodsonii Maas cutting will infested with dampen off. Damping off is a horticultural disease caused by pathogenic microorganisms, will kill Costus Woodsonii Maas cutting before it has a chance to rooting. If temperature ranges are above the desired range and humidity is too low, when try to propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas will wilt, rot, and die. If fail to maintain ideal temperatures when propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas, they will remain green and healthy looking but fail to create roots and eventually will die. For first 21 day, I put my stem cutting at full shade location. By full shade, I don't mean full darkness, just less than 3–4 hours of filtered sunlight during the rest of the day. Too bright sunlight may cause overheating to the Costus Woodsonii Maas cutting. Too bright sunlight also may cause overheating by raising the air temperature in the polypropagator, propagators, and humidity dome, both of which can dry out or damage the leaves. Also, too little sunlight will make the cutting difficult to do photosynthesis process. Cutting that have difficulty in photosynthesis process will make cutting harder to produce root. Too little sunlight also encourages the development of disease in stem cutting. My minimum temperature when growing Costus Woodsonii Maas is 24 degrees Celsius. My maximum temperature when growing Costus Woodsonii Maas is 32 degrees Celsius. I grow my Costus Woodsonii Maas in tropical climate. Growing media I use when propagate Costus Woodsonii Maas cutting contain cocoa peat, red burn soil, micro, fine sand, old humus, and charcoal. Or you can use perlite or vermiculite or sphagnum moss or coconut husk or whatever growing media available to your convenience. Just make sure that your growing media are sterilized and clean. By choosing sterilized and clean growing media will prevent new cutting from becoming infected from disease-causing pathogens. Container size I use for growing Costus Woodsonii Maas, height 20 centimeters, width 30 centimeters. For me, the advantage for growing in container is gives me more control over sunlight, moisture, and temperature. When planting Costus Woodsonii Maas in container, please make sure it have good drainage. Fail to do so will promote root rot. I only water my Costus plant when the topsoil is dry. For my climate, it is about every other day. Watering time for my Costus is between 7 to 9 in the morning. If raining, I do not water my plant. When watering Costus, please do not let soil become too soggy or waterlogged. It's easier to overwater than underwater. For this growing season, on average my water usage is about 300 milliliters. Your water usage maybe varies than mine. Water usage depend on container size, container type, weather, and climate you live in. Soil pH for growing Costus Woodsonii Maas are from 5.8 to 7.5 pH. Costus Woodsonii Maas grows best in fertile loamy soils. Costus Woodsonii Maas grows best in tropical climate. Costus Woodsonii Maas lifespan in my climate is perennial. Costus Woodsonii Maas, native to Colombia. On average, Costus Woodsonii Maas height is between 1 to 2 meters. Costus Woodsonii Maas can be grown in full or partial shade location. The specific epithet Woodsonii honors Dr. Robert Woodson Jr., 1904 to 1963, curator of the Missouri Botanical Garden Herbarium. Costus Woodsonii Maas start to produce flower. Common name for Costus Woodsonii Maas are scarlet spiral flag, red button ginger, Saituar Hullia mera. Costus Woodsonii Maas are from Costaceae family. Costus Woodsonii Maas, inflorescence is cylindrical with a tapered tip. The bracts are tightly overlapped, bright red and waxy. Second stems start to produce flower. I using fertilizer for my Costus Woodsonii Maas once per month. I using fertilizer for my Costus Woodsonii Maas in the morning. For this growing season, I use multi-purpose liquid fertilizer. You can use any fertilizer that's available to your convenience. Please read the instruction carefully before using any kind of fertilizer. My Costus Woodsonii Maas, inflorescence width size 0.5 centimeters. Costus Woodsonii Maas can grow up to 10 centimeters in height. Ants sometimes can be seen in Costus Woodsonii Maas plant. Ants are attracted to the extrafloral nectaries which occur between the bracts. Ants do not pollinate the tubular flower. Instead, they may help to protect the developing fruits from damage by fly larvae. When growing Costus Woodsonii Maas, if you see your edges of the leaves turn brown, it indicated insufficient water. To solve that problem, increase your watering. One of pests you may encounter when growing Costus Woodsonii Maas is mealybugs. You can identify them by their tiny, soft-bodied insects surrounded by a fuzzy, white mess around the stems and leaf nodes. Mealybugs cause damage by sucking the juice from their host plants. You can remove mealybugs with a cloth or paper towel. Wash them away using water. This is best for light infestations. For a heavily infested part with the mealybugs, discard or prune the plant. Raining season right now in my climate. You also can use neem oil to fight mealybugs infestation. When using neem oil, please use according to label instructions. I do not encounter any pest when growing Costus Woodsonii Maas. I do not encounter any plant diseases when growing Costus Woodsonii Maas. Costus Woodsonii Maas can be propagated by rhizome, seeds, or stem cutting. Costus Woodsonii Maas, usually grown as ornamental plants. Costus Woodsonii Maas, flower blooming. Costus Woodsonii Maas reddish tubular flowers have a yellow-orange lip near the apex. They emerge at the top of the inflorescence. Usually 1 to 3 at a time from between the bracts. Since my Costus Woodsonii Maas still young, it only produce 1 at the time. Costus Woodsonii Maas, wilting flower. It seems the flower only lasts about 4 days. Costus Woodsonii Maas flower, bloom again. From my experience, Costus Woodsonii Maas is one of the easiest plant to propagate. It also fast-growing and almost maintenance-free. Compared to roses. Suggestion: how about you guys give a try to grow Costus Woodsonii Maas today? Thank you for watching.